Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group Roundtable with our partner, the Chicago Regional Office of Veteran Benefits Administration. Today is Saturday, August 14th, 2021, and don't forget this month is also, August, is the National Wellness Month of the year. I'm Sean Claiborne, a National Army National Guard veteran, and also standing in for Cliff Kelly and Dr. Damon Arnold. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer for today is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have two good guests on our show today for this segment. We have Mr. John Pennington. Now, he's a retired U.S. Army officer and the Chicago Regional Office Assistant at the Veteran Service Center Manager. Now, he's a football coach, a father, veteran Army officer. He's with us today on the line. Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And also,
appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Pretty good. And also joining Mr. Pennington is Melissa Jolly. She's a retired U.S. Air Force veteran and a Chicago Regional Office training coach and outreach coordinator. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure. Now, one thing, Melissa, I looked at your profile. I had one thing that I noticed on here that caught my attention. So you started out in the military as a jet engine mechanic and a fuel truck driver. Okay, those are two. First of all, those are two MOSs that you don't normally see women take on. You don't think of it, at least anyway. I was a mechanic in the military myself. So you went from that, and then you became a mental health technician. So how did you make that? What was that transition about? And I know that's going to lead into what we're going to talk about. So what was that all about?
Well, that transition was more so of a location move. I was stuck overseas in Okinawa, Japan, and to get back stateside, it was more of a move to transition. And well, in addition to that, I was also interested in the mental health service line and helping others. I've always had a position, always want to help serve, and I'm a person of empathy, and I like to be there for my friends. So it was something I was interested in as well.
Okay. And then, Mr. Pennington, you were a football coach and a father of 5. So how does that play into what we're about to talk about? So give us a little kind of brief synopsis. Because being a football coach and you're a guy of fire, I just know that automatically. You got to have fire in your belly to be a football coach.
That's right.
And you got 5 kids to father. So I know that's a lot on your plate. So, but at the same time, you are basically doing an outreach events to try and do what? What exactly are these outreach events about?
So, to the Chicago Regional Office, we want to expand our outreach initiative across the state of Illinois. Not traditionally, we do it in the local area, but we want to expand that. So we want everyone to know that we're ready to go out even to rural areas. So we're so dedicated to that we actually create a position, which Melissa Jolly is our outreach coach. So she's in charge of going out, trying to get outreach activities. We want to spread the word that we're ready to come out. We want to talk to you. Not only that, we also are one of 3 stations that are testing out a Vera appointment-based system, where traditionally you walk in the regional office, there's usually long wait times. We try to want to mitigate that a little bit. So the idea is that you go to this website, you schedule an appointment, and you can walk in, and your appointment is ready for you. Not only that, you have 2 options, in person, or if you're more in a rural area, you can't really get out to see us, or maybe it's an inconvenience coming to our location, finding all that parking. You could also do a virtual appointment where we can call you and do the same thing that we do face-to-face. We could send you letters, anything that you need, any assistance you may need, we could walk you through it. So we expect that to be rolled out nationally, but right now it's still available to our Illinois veterans. So we do have a website. I don't if you guys want it. I'm sure you do.
What's the website?
It is https:// vets VETS .force FORCE / VA Vera, which is VAVERA /S/. So you could go on that website and you could schedule an appointment. Pretty easy. Even if you need to reschedule or cancel, you could go right to this website. Usually within 5 to 15 minutes, you will get an email verifying your appointment. And we get that appointment notification as well, straight to us. And easy as that, and we will look forward to seeing you on your appointment date.
That sounds fascinating. Now, I think I'm going to rewind a little bit to give some people that are not veterans kind of an insight as what we're really talking about. So in the VA system, when you're a veteran, you don't automatically just get these benefits just showered upon you. They don't just fall out the sky and you start getting all these great benefits. You have to apply for these benefits, and that's a process involved with that. And sometimes that process can be long and arduous to try to get these benefits. There's a lot of paperwork that could be involved, and what you guys do is actually help people fill out their paperwork and get appointments to do what they need to do to get these benefits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We will help you any way we can. If you have a question, we can walk you through it. If you need help filing a claim, we could do that for you as well.
Melissa, could you explain like some of the benefits? What are the most common benefits people are trying to get through the military or through the VA?
Sure. So the whole purpose of us doing this outreach initiative is to reach out to our veterans and claimants and the fellow stakeholders throughout the state and let them know how they can apply for these benefits. What we see most common is that people want to get information on how do they get service connected, how do they get in touch with their education benefits, home loans, type of pension, non-service connection pension, education, VRNE, which is Veteran Readiness and Employment. But most of all, the most common of all those is how do I get service-connected disability compensation? I think that's the most common asked question, and that's specifically what we specialize in at the Chicago Regional Office in the Veteran Service Center. We have also VRNE that does work in the Chicago Regional Office, but specifically in the Veteran Service Center, we focus on that in our outreach initiative.
Okay. And then have you seen an uptick in people applying for benefits? And also describe when you apply for benefits, what's the process like as far as how much paperwork is involved? Like what's the timeline before you get approved? Is it likely you're going to get approved? Those types of issues that people think about as veterans, we know this because, many of us have applied for benefits, and sometimes people get frustrated, especially if you're a family member of a veteran trying to apply for benefits. What's the process like once they get in communication with you guys?
Well, the goal is 90 days. And if a veteran submits everything in the fully developed claim process and has everything that they need up front, and we tell them specifically when a veteran is applying for a claim, every single thing that they need, and for each specific thing that they're claiming, this is what you need. The evidence must show these particular things in order to be service-connected. And if the veteran does submit everything that we need up front, the timeline is shortened significantly.
Okay. Wow.
Typically, they'll go for an examination and the claims process will go through if it's warranted. And the goal, again, is 90 days.
Okay. And then have you seen an uptick in people participating or people coming out? And then maybe people that have been denied benefits in the past? And also explain that because people, like I said, a lot of civilians don't understand that the VA system is so confusing and so foreign. Because we're used to, as civilians, if you get a job someplace and you have health insurance, you just go to the doctor. You don't have to fill out, a form or any kind of proof of paperwork to show that your health problem needs to be covered by your insurance. But that's not the case in the veteran system. Correct?
No, not necessarily. And I have seen an uptake, to answer your question. And I think we, as the VA as a whole, as I think knowledge is more readily available for everybody out there with the internet, social media, more outreach efforts. And that's the purpose of what we're trying to do. We're getting the word out there more. And we have veteran service officers that are there to help us, people like you on the radio, and media, that we do have an uptake in claims processing. And I also think that veterans are claiming more conditions, where back in the day, veterans would only claim a couple of things and, think the rest wasn't really combat related. They didn't think service-connected disability. They were thinking this wasn't combat. But I think that now with the more availability of knowledge and education, that there is more veterans claiming more disabilities.
And John, you were a military officer in the Army. So as an officer, with your perspective, as a person in leadership, a person who's in charge of a unit of some level, what do you see needs to be done going forward? What are things that the VA system or even Congress, if necessary, could change and make the process easier for veterans to get access to their benefits?
Well, that's a great question. I think the first thing I know as a retired officer, when I was getting out, I didn't know much about VA, even what they were or what services they offered. I think the first step, we need to expand, the the knowledge to more veterans and more servicemen and women that are getting out of service that, hey, this is a VA, here's what we all have to offer, here's what you can expect. I think if we help expand their knowledge of what, like what Melissa was saying, what is a service-connected condition? It doesn't have to be combat. It's anything that happened to you while you were in service. Maybe you hurt your knee or your back. You can be compensated for that because you incurred it while on duty. Same with any job out in the civilian world. If you could file compensation for any injuries, we just need to expand the knowledge of that. And I think sometimes in the news you see a lot of bad things about what VA does wrong, but you don't necessarily see what we do right. Where I know here, Chicago Regional Office, we pride ourselves in providing world-class customer service, and we never kick the can down the road. So if we get an email or a veteran contact us, hey, we need help, even though it may not be our jurisdiction, we will find the answer and help you all the way through until we could get finalized. I think that's what separates Chicago from majority of our peers is that we are willing to help, we want to help, and we'll do any means necessary because the majority of us here at the regional office, we're veterans ourselves, or we have tie to veterans, and we're very compassionate about helping our fellow veterans any way that we can. And to answer your question, that's why we have Melissa. We need to expand our outreach initiative across the state of Illinois, saying, hey, we're here to help you, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you get a grant when necessary. So we're still in that mindset, grant when we can, deny only if we have to.
Okay.
Only if we have to.
And then what are those denials like? I mean, so you say sometimes people have to get or denied their benefits. What are the reasons why they get denied often?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So a lot of times is that maybe the injury it didn't happen while in service. Maybe it happened 2 or 3 years down the road after they got out, or maybe there was just no medical documentation. Or I know Melissa will be able to answer it better than I can. She was a former Raider, so she actually decided these things. So Melissa, if you want to jump in and help me out, but I think we're in agreement. A lot of it has to do with you have to establish that link, right?
So Melissa, so what is that? What are some of the reasons that people get denied, or what are some of the holdups? And also too, a follow-up question to that would be, how does a veteran typically react to that? I mean, so if someone is hurt or they feel like they have an injury and then they're denied for whatever reason, how do they respond to that? And what are their recourses for that? What can they do if they're denied a service?
Sure, I can answer this, and that's a great question. It gets asked often. So I'm going to give a very basic of what you need to be service connected. There's 3 pillars to this. So the first thing you need is an in-service event. It doesn't have to be an actual diagnosis, but an event or injury or diagnosis in service has to happen. So that's your first pillar. The second one is you have to have a current diagnosis. So whatever that is, that has to be diagnosed today, currently. The third piece is we need a link between the two. So we need a doctor that's going to say that the current diagnosed condition is related to that in-service event. And a lot of times the missing piece is either that current disability saying, you know what, yeah, we know you hurt your knee in service, but right now there's nothing wrong with you. You know, the knee is perfectly fine, according to medical evidence. It's not just, based on what a rater says. It's medical evidence doesn't show that a currently diagnosed condition exists. Or sometimes that link. So we don't have a medical opinion that says that the current diagnosed condition is related to the in-service event. And that happens often when injuries happen in the middle. So you may have a knee injury in service that fully resolved, and then maybe you had a car crash that happened 10 years later, and you re-injured your knee and had a total knee replacement as a result. Oftentimes, a medical professional will say the current diagnosed condition is related to something else and not the military service. Now, to answer your second question about how do they react, not well. And I'm a veteran myself, and I've been denied myself. So to be denied on something is definitely crushing, especially when you know that, this happened in service. You feel, even though I'm not a medical professional, I feel this is when this began. So what a veteran needs to remember is those 3 pieces of evidence by law the VBA is required to have. those pieces of evidence. So find that missing piece. If what we're missing is a current diagnosis, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But maybe, you didn't explain to your provider exactly what's wrong with you, so they don't understand the current depth of your pain or your illness. And, some people do minimize. So, the key is to get that missing link. Do you need that link diagnosing the current condition and relating it to service? Do you need a current diagnosis? Or are we missing that piece that's in service? If you don't have it in service, there's no way we'd be able to service connect you unless we have that piece.
And that sounds like basically paperwork. You need some kind of documentation that shows some kind of link between what you feel is a service-related injury or problem with so the military can see that and make that connection. Am I interpreting that right? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So now, what's their recourse? So what happens then? So a person gets denied. They have a painful injury, or they have a back problem. What do they do next? So what can they do? And say it's a situation where the VA just flat out denies it. Maybe they can't get that documentation. Is it easy to get this documentation, or is it something that that many veterans can't get to get the service that they want or need?
Are you speaking in regards to finding that piece in service, like finding that medical documentation
exactly
in service? Well, it depends. Does it exist? So, a lot of times, did they go for treatment while they were on active duty? Or was it just something that happened and they just told their command and never sought treatment? So we need the documentation. Okay. There are certain situations. So let's say like PTSD, for example, that's a very common claim of veterans that served in combat roles. Oftentimes, veterans are not going to be treated for PTSD or any mental condition during active duty, but we can document that they were in a hostile terrorist active location in the Gulf War or Korea, Vietnam, and we can see that they in fact were in this location, and then we can see if there's a current diagnosis and a link between the two things. There are other situations where injuries can happen where we can get what we call buddy statements. And those buddy statements can help substantiate claims if that veteran did in fact serve with that veteran at that time, and we can prove it.
Okay. But in the case, once again, though, in those cases where they can't get that documentation, say a person had an injury or something happened, but there was nobody that could verify it, there's no documentation in the military. So what's their recourse now? They have to just go through the civilian system, or is there any other types of things that a veteran can do that the VA may help them with, or what's their next step?
Okay, so if you're talking about healthcare purposes, they definitely can be entitled to healthcare, and that's through the VHA side, which I did used to work there a long time ago too, so I can speak a little bit about that. But entitlement varies based on different categories. I believe there's 8 different categories of who's allowed to be treated. And if they fall within one of the categories, some of them are income, some are based on periods of service during wartime periods. Some are if you have a Purple Heart or certain awards, or if you're service connected already, then you're entitled to VA healthcare. Typically, anybody who served on active duty should be entitled. The problem is that income comes in to play a factor for certain veterans that have no kind of service-connected disabilities or wartime service. Okay. So those veterans, may have to try other routes, civilian side, or there are some veteran non-for-profit organizations that provide some care. And we do a lot of outreach and learn about those type of resources for veterans too that we like to share when they come in and we're not able to help them. But again, that's more of a Veterans Health Administration. That's a different administration part to see if they're eligible for those kind of benefits.
And I think that's important to distinguish because a lot of people don't realize that there are certain benefits you can get through the VA just being a veteran. Like, for example, I can go to the VA and get care, but I might have to pay for it, or it wouldn't be necessarily a free covered thing for me myself personally. But other people, when they go through and try to get care for stuff, we're start talking about what happened with Agent Orange, right? The Agent Orange during Vietnam. And people that are the military is now finally recognizing that and doing things to try and get these veterans treatment from that if they were exposed to that chemical. However, you still have veterans out there that are just frustrated because they feel like they've been doing everything they possibly can do, and in their mind, it's just like, how could you say this is not a service-connected injury? And I'm having all these health issues 20, 30 years later after serving in a hostile environment, and they are not savvy with paperwork. They don't know. They're not accountants and lawyers. They're filling their they're mechanics and and blue collar workers or whatever. They don't do paperwork and do accounting for a living. So they're basically trying to fill this stuff out on their own. But you guys step in now and you can actually help them, figure out this paperwork, navigate those turns, those twists and turns in the process, and hopefully get them the benefits. Now you mentioned one thing too about PTSD. How do you think PTSD plays into a veteran's mindset when they're going to apply for it? They're going to do something that may be challenging, like you mentioned, alluded to before. When you're denied a benefit, sometimes that could be very frustrating, and that could be very, just disarming or arming, basically. So how has that played into? Do you see PTSD playing a role into how successful a veteran can be to apply for benefits? Does that make your job harder to try and help people that suffer from PTSD? And I ask that to both you guys, John and Melissa.
Well, I know PTSD, like when I was coming out, that's a word that nobody wanted to talk about, right? Especially veterans who want to pursue a job with security clearance. If you have PTSD and diagnosed with it, obviously you can't, in the past, you couldn't get a job with a high security clearance. But we know now that that's changed where that's no longer a factor into it. But I think when it comes to PTSD, we have a lot of veterans who are suffering and still don't want to say anything. I think there's still that perception of being weak if you're asking for help regarding PTSD. I mean, that's something that I think we need to change and try more outreach initiative with Melissa, right? But I think a lot of that veterans just don't want to file PTSD. But if they do, sometimes they don't want to talk about because it brings up triggers. And sometimes, unfortunately, if you don't talk about specifics, it could lead to not establishing a nexus, and you're not relaying that how severe it really is for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that could lead to lower a rating or maybe being denied because of that.
Wow. So just having PTSD and not admitting that you have PTSD can actually have an effect on whether or not you get benefits.
Right, because especially if you don't want to talk about it or seek treatment for it.
Wow. Melissa, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to add, you had asked about what kind of assistance we have for veterans with PTSD-related types of claims, and we have an extra duty to assist those types of claims where we ask for specifics. So we send out these forms that are specific to that kind of claim that ask us, give us these details that will help us prove what happened. We call the stressor, the in-service event. And once the veteran returns these forms, then we can help, kind of substantiate the claim. In addition to that, veterans specifically with military sexual trauma also have an extra kind of coordinator who will reach out and help them, guide them through the process. Military sexual trauma-related claims are often related to PTSD. PTSD is typically the disability that results from military sexual trauma. And so in that case, we have outreach coordinators for military sexual trauma. We also have claims processors that are specified to help these kind of veterans and these claims, and they send extra letters and extra duty to assist type of mail to help them along through the process. And we make phone calls and we reach out, and they get a little bit more leeway, what we call a marker. It doesn't necessarily have to be a reported event, but if we see a marker that is a possibility that something like that could have happened in the military, and that goes for personal trauma as well, personal trauma and military sexual trauma, we will consider that an in-service event. The other pieces are still required, though. You still need a current diagnosis, and we need a doctor, a medical physician, to say that those two things are related, the in-service event and the current diagnosis. Right.
So my last question, give me a positive story, something that you've seen that really have given you hope and let you know that you're doing something that makes a difference in the community and helping veterans. What's a powerful story that you saw, something that was just, wow, I did this, I helped this person out? What stories do you have for me?
I know I have one personally. Back in the day when I used to develop these claims, when I was a little lonely VSR, I looked through this claim really hard. It was a tough claim. Went back to the 80s. Wow. So what happened was that the VA actually killed this veteran off per se saying that he passed. But he came in, filed a claim, and said, "No, here I am. I haven't died. So please reestablish my claim," which they did. Wow. But they didn't go back and service connect him for every condition that he filed. So me, being a young VSR, looking through this, noticed there was something wasn't right. So I brought to my quality coach at the time, noticed that, yeah, you're right, John, but we need to figure out which claim and what date. So I did my long research and found that they actually didn't service connect this veteran for actually PTSD, what we were talking about. And eventually he got service connected back when I was working in 2010, got service connected back to 1981. Wow. So he had a huge retro. So, of course, I took it upon myself. I wanted to call this veteran and let him know what happened. Long story short, he was in tears because he was financially strapped and he really needed this money and he was getting ready to be homeless. So him getting a $100,000 retro was great, and I will always remember that story, and that's why I won't work for the VA. Wow. Nowhere else. VA helped me when my wife made me go to VA, even though I didn't know what it was. They helped me, so this was my first job out of the Army and will be my only job.
And one more time before we wrap up, Melissa, can you give us, how does a veteran get a hold of you guys? Where do they go? Website, phone numbers, addresses?
Sure. The phone number is 1-800-827-1000. And they can always go on www.va.gov, and we got all the resources for the VA on there as well. I do want to put one last thing out there about outreach specific. If any, non-for-profits or faith-based initiative, we have a whole group of our initiative, what we're trying to do for outreach into the state of Illinois. If anybody has anything they want to email me to attend virtually at the moment for COVID, but they can email me at melissa.jolly@va.gov, and that's spelled MELISSA.jolly, JOLLY, @va.gov.
Thanks, you guys, for coming out. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we'll be
Thanks
right
for
back.
having us.
We're always happy to do so.
Anytime.